It's in your soup, your salad, your smoothie. But that dash of spice might not be what you think. Turmeric that's glowing from illegal dyes. Paprika bulked up with brick dust. Oregano that's more weeds than herb. Around the world, millions are unknowingly cooking with adulterated spices, laced with toxic powders, industrial-grade chemicals, and fake fillers not even meant for food. Why? Because spice fraud is cheap, hard to detect, and incredibly profitable. In this documentary, we'll take you inside the billion-dollar racket corrupting your kitchen shelf. You'll see how inspectors uncovered criminal spice syndicates, how routine tests revealed lead chromate and Sudan dye in organic products, and how even the biggest brands aren't immune. This isn't just about flavor. It's about trust, safety, and health. You've been told spices heal. But what if they've been hiding poisons in plain sight, and no one warned you until now? It starts with a smell, warm, familiar. Maybe it's the turmeric in your curry, the paprika in your stew, a scent that says comfort, family, home. But what if that comforting scent is covering up something sinister? In kitchens across the world, people are adding pinches of spice, believing they're feeding their family's health, flavor, and tradition. But hidden inside those powders could be industrial paint pigment, crushed brick, or ground up leaves that have no business being in your food. In 1994, Hungary was rocked by scandal. Their beloved paprika, a symbol of national pride, was found contaminated with red lead, a pigment used in industrial paints. Dozens were poisoned. Entire supermarket shelves were emptied. And suddenly, a spice that defined Hungarian identity became a national threat. Fast forward to 2017. In the US, turmeric sold in neighborhood stores was found laced with lead chromate, an industrial yellow pigment banned from food, known to damage the brain and nervous system. The target market? Immigrant families, children, the unsuspecting. And it doesn't stop there. Olive leaves and myrtle have been ground up and sold as oregano. Fake saffron made of dyed corn silk has passed through customs as high-end Spanish spice. In India, entire factories churn out masalas made of sawdust, brick powder, and chemical dyes, bagged, labeled, and sold like the real thing. These aren't isolated incidents. They're part of a global pattern. A billion-dollar industry built on deception. Yet you won't hear about this on the news. There's no recall alert on your phone. Because spice fraud doesn't explode. It seeps in, quietly, invisibly. 1 teaspoon at a time. You open your spice rack expecting flavor. What you might be holding is evidence. Proof of a crime that spans continents, crosses borders, and sits quietly on your dinner plate. This is the story of how your most trusted ingredients became the perfect disguise for one of the world's most overlooked and dangerous food crimes. Imagine this: 2 bags, same size, same weight. One holds cinnamon, the other sawdust. To the eye, they're nearly identical. But on the market, one is worth pennies, the other dollars. That's the trapdoor. That's where fraud begins. Spices are the perfect target. Lightweight, high value, and nearly untraceable once ground. A single kilogram of saffron can fetch over $5,000. Cardamom, vanilla, turmeric, prized across cultures, are some of the most expensive ingredients on earth by weight. But when they're ground down into powders, they lose their fingerprints. No stems, no seeds, no clear signs. Color can be faked with chemical dyes. Texture replaced with chalk, starch, or brick dust. Even the aroma can be artificially sprayed. What's left is a powder that looks authentic, smells convincing, and hides everything it shouldn't contain. Now add in the chaos of the global supply chain. That turmeric in your kitchen? It may have started on a sun-baked farm in Bangladesh, milled in India, brokered through Dubai, repackaged in Europe, and finally, stocked in a US supermarket. In that journey, it might pass through 20, even 30 different hands, and with each hand, another opportunity to cheat. There's no GPS on a grain of spice, no security seal on a bag of paprika, and very few eyes watching the trail. Governments can barely keep up. Routine inspections only scratch the surface. Most food safety systems aren't built for complex powders that change form 3 times before reaching a shelf. And that's why spices are among the most adulterated foods on the planet. Easy to manipulate, hard to verify, almost impossible to trace. For fraudsters, the spice trade is the perfect crime scene, because by the time it reaches your plate, the evidence has already disappeared. Turmeric, the golden root, celebrated in ancient medicine, marketed today as a superfood. You've seen it in health drinks, capsules, lattes, even face masks. Its color, a deep glowing yellow, is a symbol of healing. But what if that golden glow isn't curcumin, but a chemical more at home in a junkyard? For years, something far more dangerous has been hiding in turmeric. Lead chromate, a cheap industrial pigment banned from food in nearly every country on Earth. Why? Because lead is a potent neurotoxin. It damages the brain, especially in children. And chromium-6, the other half of the compound, it's a known carcinogen. Together, they've transformed one of the world's most beloved health foods into a potential poison. Why would anyone do this? Because fraud pays. Lead chromate costs pennies. Just a few cents worth can make old, dull turmeric look fresh, vibrant, and premium. It's not just deceptive, it's strategic. The brighter the color, the more authentic it looks to buyers. And in a global spice market under pressure to meet appearance standards, color means profit. This isn't a one-off mistake, it's deliberate. In Bangladesh, the world's largest exporter of turmeric, investigations uncovered the full scale of the problem. Factory owners and middlemen admitted to adding lead chromate during processing. Researchers from Stanford found direct links between adulterated turmeric and elevated blood lead levels. These weren't trace amounts. These were measurable, life-altering exposures. The consequences? Children with cognitive delays, families with unexplained illnesses, generations exposed unknowingly through the food they trusted most. This wasn't a freak contamination. It was a calculated gamble. Add poison, make a profit, hope no one notices. But the human cost? Irreversible. In Hungary, paprika isn't just a spice. It's part of who they are. It shows up in almost every meal, stews, sausages, soups, and hangs in bunches in kitchens across the countryside, like decorations made of tradition. So when the scandal broke in 1994, it wasn't just a food safety crisis. It was a national heartbreak. Authorities discovered that some producers had laced paprika with red lead, the same pigment used in industrial paints and rust-proofing metals. The motive? To deepen the color, to make it look richer, fresher, more desirable on the shelf. But the cost was immediate and devastating. Dozens of Hungarians were poisoned. Emergency health alerts swept across the country. Supermarkets yanked products from shelves. And in kitchens from Budapest to the rural villages, families stared at their spice jars in disbelief. A Hungarian woman simply can't cook without paprika, one elderly woman told reporters. Her voice trembled. not just with fear, but betrayal. That quote echoed through national headlines. It became a lament. The fallout was swift and brutal. Police raided dozens of facilities. Over 60 arrests followed. Hungary's exports were halted. Foreign markets hesitated, and what was once a symbol of national flavor had become a cautionary tale. One toxic additive turned a cultural icon into a weapon of mass deception. And it raised a darker question that would ripple beyond Hungary. If this could happen to paprika, the sacred spice of an entire country, what else was hiding in the global spice rack? That answer would come next. From a bottle of Worcestershire sauce in the UK. February 2005. It started quietly, in a lab, with a routine test on a bottle of Worcestershire sauce. Then the results came in. The sauce contained Sudan Y, a synthetic red dye once used to color industrial grease and shoe polish. It's bold, vivid, and carcinogenic. Banned from all food products in the UK, Europe, and beyond. That single finding sparked a chain reaction that would become the largest food recall in British history. More than 400 products were stripped from supermarket shelves. Soups, ready meals, sauces, and snacks, all traced back to one hidden culprit. A single batch of chili powder tainted with Sudan one. And that's the most chilling part. One contaminated spice ingredient had quietly infiltrated the entire food system, across factories, brands, and national supply chains, without setting off a single alarm. This wasn't a freak accident. It was a decision. Somewhere, someone added Sudan I to make the chili powder look brighter, redder, more profitable. A dye meant for machine parts, slipped into something people eat, and no one noticed until it was too late. It was a wake-up call, a moment of reckoning. Britain realized that spice fraud doesn't stay sealed in the jar. It spreads through supply chains, onto your plate, into your body. But if a single batch of chili powder could cripple a nation's food system, what happens when the fraud is global and far more hidden? That answer would arrive in America in the form of a golden powder and a poisoned child. Queens, New York. A mother stands in her kitchen, stirring turmeric into warm milk for her toddler. It's a ritual passed down for generations, meant to soothe, to strengthen, to heal. But this time, it didn't heal. Unbeknownst to her, the bright yellow powder in that spoon was laced with lead chromate, the same toxic compound used in industrial paint, a banned substance smuggled silently into a tradition of care. In 2017, U.S. health officials started testing turmeric from South Asian grocery stores in places like New York and North Carolina. What they discovered was shocking. Many samples were contaminated with dangerous levels of lead, far beyond what's considered safe. The deeper they dug, the more disturbing it became. The trail led thousands of miles away to Bangladesh, a major exporter of turmeric. There, under relentless pressure to produce vivid, high curcumin turmeric for global markets, some suppliers made a devastating choice. Mix in a few cents worth of lead-based pigment to boost the color. It worked. The turmeric looked vibrant, pure, premium, but it was poisoning the very people it was supposed to nourish. In communities across the U.S., children may be at risk of lead exposure, potentially facing anemia, developmental delays, or neurological harm. Pregnant women might unknowingly carry the toxin in their blood. Entire families could be affected over time without ever realizing the source. There was no warning, no bitter taste, no strange smell. Just a teaspoon every day. And the damage built silently over months, even years. A powder, once celebrated as an ancient superfood, had become a modern hazard in disguise. And the worst part? It wasn't an accident. It was a business decision. If the United States, armed with labs, regulations, and import checks, couldn't stop lead-laced turmeric from reaching store shelves, then what hope was there for the source? That question didn't go unanswered, because halfway across the world, in the turmeric fields of Bangladesh, a reckoning was about to begin. In 2019, a global health crisis pointed its finger at one unlikely place: the turmeric fields of Bangladesh. Across the U.S., lead-poisoned turmeric was turning up in grocery stores. Investigators traced the toxic powder back thousands of miles to processing hubs in Bangladesh, where raw turmeric roots were being dyed with lead chromate to boost their golden color. The scandal ignited headlines. But what happened next defied expectations. Instead of denying, stalling, or blaming rogue actors, Bangladesh launched an unprecedented cleanup operation. Factory inspections ramped up. Enforcement teams began seizing tainted turmeric. Traders were prosecuted. Even street vendors were warned. No more fake color. With help from global researchers, local scientists introduced safe alternatives to the banned pigment. Training sessions were held. Farmers and processors were educated about the invisible damage caused by lead. Community awareness campaigns reached rural towns. Turmeric exports were paused, rechecked, and slowly restarted, this time under strict new testing protocols. The turnaround was swift and rare. By 2021, reports showed a marked drop in contaminated turmeric shipments. Major importers like the U.S. noticed improvements. For the first time in decades, a major spice-producing country had not only acknowledged systemic fraud, but fought back with real reform. It wasn't perfect. The problem isn't gone, but something changed. Because for once, a story of food fraud didn't end in scandal. It sparked a movement. In the heart of the world's turmeric belt, trust was being rebuilt. And the next time someone in Queens stirs turmeric into milk, maybe, just maybe, it won't come with a hidden dose of poison. (2015). A quiet investigation began in the UK and Ireland, testing something so common, so benign, no one expected it to be a threat. Oregano, not saffron, not cardamom, not some exotic high-value spice, just oregano, the humble green flakes you toss on pizza, pasta, and roast potatoes, a kitchen staple. But what investigators found was anything but ordinary. Of 78 samples tested, nearly 1 in 4 were outright fake, contaminated with shredded olive leaves, dried myrtle, and unidentifiable greenery. They looked right, smelled right, but they weren't oregano, and the deception didn't stop at appearance. These fake leaves weren't food grade. They hadn't been screened for contaminants, pesticides, or banned herbicides. One lab expert called it the perfect scam. Why? Because you can't tell with your eyes, but your body knows. And while the headlines faded, the problem didn't. In 2021, 6 years later, tests revealed that oregano fraud was not only still happening, but even worse. Some samples were up to 70% adulterated. 7 out of 10 flakes on your plate weren't what the label promised. Think about that. You're cooking dinner, sprinkling in what you believe is flavor, authenticity, tradition, and instead, you're adding ground-up filler, possibly toxic, possibly dangerous. Definitely a lie. This is what makes spice fraud so sinister. It's not loud. It's not obvious. It doesn't come with a bitter taste or a stomachache. It comes in quietly, in the most familiar foods, It blends in with trust. And if oregano, one of the cheapest, most accessible spices, is this easy to fake? What about the most expensive one in the world? Next, a spice worth more than gold, and a fraud ring that fooled an entire continent. They call it red gold, and not just for its color. Saffron is the world's most expensive spice by weight. It takes 150,000 flowers to produce a single kilo. Each thread is hand-harvested, dried with care, and prized for its delicate aroma and vibrant hue. Per gram, it's worth more than gold. So it should be no surprise that it became the center of one of the most audacious food fraud schemes in Europe. In 2021, authorities in Spain uncovered a multi-million euro criminal operation. The con? Simple. Start with a tiny amount of real saffron, just enough to pass initial tests. Then blend it with dyed floral waste, safflower petals, corn silk, sometimes even shredded paper. Import it from Iran. Repackage it under the prestigious La Mancha label. Stamp it with luxury branding and national flags. Sell it at triple the price. It looked elite. It smelled convincing. It fooled importers, retailers, and even professional chefs. Until Europol launched a sting and seized half a ton of counterfeit saffron. Inside the boxes, a polished illusion. Outside the boxes, a national scandal. Criminals' only concern is profit, no matter the cost to the public, an Interpol official said. But this wasn't just fraud. This was cultural theft. La Mancha saffron is more than a product. It's a symbol of Spanish culinary heritage. Families grow it. Regions depend on it. And now, that legacy had been hijacked. Because in the spice world, even the rarest, purest, most carefully protected ingredient can become a disguise for deception. But while saffron fraud stunned Europe, something even more disturbing was simmering across the globe, in the back streets of Delhi. What if the powders in your spice rack weren't just fake, but made from literal trash? May 2024, Delhi, India. In the city's industrial outskirts, behind rusted gates and unmarked doors, police raided 2 factories masquerading as spice processing plants. What they found inside didn't resemble a food facility. It looked like a war zone. 15 tons of fake masala, ready for packaging, ready for market, ready for your kitchen. What was in it? Brick powder, ground from construction debris to simulate chilli, sawdust, sifted fine to mimic cumin, crushed leaves, not herbs, just dried foliage from the street. And worst of all, chemical dyes banned from food use, some used in paint, others in textiles. None meant for human consumption. This wasn't a back alley operation. It was industrial-scale fakery. Photographs from the raid are hard to forget. Open sacks of filthy trash-grade ingredients, dye dust hanging in the air like a fog. Workers with no gloves, no masks, no sanitation, floors slick with oil, rotting debris, and what looked like sewage runoff. And just feet away, shiny plastic packaging stamped with branding, ready to ship. And this wasn't a one-time bust. Across India's spice belt, these shadow factories operate out of reach. No regulation, no hygiene standards, no inspections, just raw demand, fed by buyers who care more about price than purity. Because here's the brutal equation. When millions of households demand colorful masala and honest production can't meet the cost, fraud steps in. Desperation fills the gap, and garbage gets dressed up as food. It's easy to assume this is someone else's problem, some other country's scandal. But the truth is, these fakes don't stay in Delhi. They move, they cross oceans, They ride cargo ships, get repackaged, relabeled, and restocked in supermarkets around the world. Next time you sprinkle masala into your meal, ask yourself, what's really inside? Because this isn't just about taste, it's about routine exposure, hidden risks, and the long-term impact of what we never think to question. You might think this is someone else's problem. That fake masala in Delhi, a world away, lead-laced turmeric in Queens, a fluke. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Spice fraud doesn't stay in the factory. It travels, it ships, it settles into homes, into meals, into bodies, and it doesn't let go. Because we don't use spices once in a while. We use them every single day, in stir-fries and sauces, in marinades and milk, in health shots and baby food. From toddlerhood to old age, we're exposed. And we don't even notice. A little chalk in your paprika? Harmless, right? A pinch of yellow dye in your curry? No big deal. That's what the fraudsters bet on. That no one will connect a sprinkle of spice with a diagnosis 10 years later. But lead has no safe dose, not even micrograms. It damages the brain, shrinks IQ, stunts development. It lingers in your bones for decades. And those vibrant red dyes? They're not food colors. They're industrial pigments made for leather, paint, plastics, known carcinogens, genotoxins, banned worldwide, found in chili powder. Why? Because color means profit. And in a powdered world where identity vanishes, the brighter the hue, the higher the price. The deception is deliberate, strategic, global, and worse, it targets trust. Spices come from places already battling corruption, poverty, and weak oversight. And that's exactly where the cuts happen, where the dyes are mixed, where the toxins begin their journey to your kitchen. You don't taste it, you don't smell it, but your body knows. Your liver processes it. Your child's brain absorbs it. So why does spice fraud matter? Because it's not just fraud. It's chronic exposure, hidden harm, and a silent poison woven into everyday life. Spices feel safe. They're used in pinches, just a dash, just a sprinkle. Too small to matter, right? That's the illusion. According to a health expert, puts it simply, unlike other metals, there is no safe consumption limit for lead. Not milligrams, micrograms, just dust, too light to see, too small to taste, can settle into bones, bloodstreams, and developing brains. And once it's there, it stays. The damage doesn't explode like food poisoning. It doesn't scream. It builds, slowly, invisibly, irreversibly. In New York, public health officials spent a decade testing spices collected during lead poisoning investigations. The findings raised serious concerns. Many samples had lead levels well above safety thresholds. In some cases, like curry or turmeric, the concentrations were so extreme, even a single serving might pose a major health risk, especially to children. And these weren't illegal imports. These were everyday products sold in everyday stores. A Stanford researcher who helped uncover the scale of the crisis issued a warning. People are unknowingly consuming something that could cause major health issues, especially children. A toddler drinking turmeric milk every day may seem perfectly healthy, but behind the scenes, their IQ might be slipping, their neural pathways may be stalling, their future, quietly, invisibly, compromised. Because that teaspoon, it doesn't have to taste like poison to act like poison. Fraudsters know this. They bet on it. If it doesn't kill instantly, they think it's undetectable, untraceable, unpunishable. But the body knows. The body remembers. The damage may start with a sprinkle, but it doesn't end there. And the more we traced these tainted spices, the clearer the pattern became. It wasn't just about one factory or one country. It was systemic, global, engineered. And the next scene shows just how far these lies can travel and how little stands in their way. That jar of cumin in your kitchen, it's traveled farther than most people ever will. It may have been grown in India, milled in Vietnam, packaged in the United Arab Emirates, and finally sold in a supermarket in the US. And that's not a fluke. That's standard. The global spice trade is a 21st century relay race, crossing borders, languages, currencies, and laws. And every step in that chain, a crack just waiting to be exploited, a customs form skipped, a paper trail forged, a name changed, a bribe paid. There are no security cameras in this world, just brokers, middlemen, and gaps. And somewhere in those gaps, reality gets rewritten. Powdered pepper mixed with battery dust, Iranian saffron rebranded as Spanish La Mancha, oregano cut with olive leaves and filler plants, up to 70% fake. It's not just fraud, it's international forgery, disguised as dinner. And by the time it lands in your shopping cart, the lie has already crossed oceans and slipped past the gatekeepers. Even food safety officials admit this is one of the hardest supply chains on Earth to police. The testing systems, like the FDA's import alerts or the EU's RASFF, catch a fraction of what moves through. Why? Because fraud in the spice world doesn't get caught by protocol. It gets caught by accident, a sick child, a fluke inspection, a whistleblower. And the rest? It slips through, untested, unnoticed, unchecked. So if you haven't heard about spice fraud recently, that doesn't mean it's stopped. It might just mean it's working. Because the crime isn't just in the factory, it's baked into the system. Why do they do it? Because it's wildly profitable. Some spices, like saffron or vanilla, are worth more than gold by weight. But the fillers, the fakery, dirt cheap, lead chromate pigment, a few cents per pound, safflower petals dyed red, a fraction of the cost of real saffron. Starch, chalk, sawdust, crushed brick, practically free. And when you mix them in, unlabeled, undetectable, you can double or triple your profits without raising eyebrows. Interpol calls food fraud a multi-billion-dollar criminal industry. One fake saffron ring in Spain raked in over 10 million euros before it was dismantled. In India, factory owners admitted they could triple their earnings overnight just by stirring in a spoonful of dye. The math is brutal in its simplicity. High reward, low risk, almost no punishment. In many countries, getting caught doesn't mean jail. It means a small fine, a suspended license, maybe an embarrassing news article. Then back to business. Because when the incentive is millions and the penalty is pocket change, the choice is obvious. And what about the people buying those spices, eating them, feeding them to their kids? They're not part of the equation. They're just collateral damage. But the system that allows this, that barely punishes it, that might be the most dangerous ingredient of all. And in the next chapter, we'll confront the question no regulator wants to answer. What happens when a billion-dollar crime is treated like a $100 mistake? What happens when a billion-dollar crime carries a $100 penalty? You get spice fraud. In many parts of the world, it's not even treated as a crime. It's treated as an inconvenience. Offenders caught selling adulterated spices often face fines in the low thousands. No arrests, no jail time. In some cases, not even a court date. In India, before recent reforms, The penalties were so minimal they became part of the business model. Factory owners openly described fines as just another cost of doing business. Most cases around the world end with product recalls. Embarrassing, sure. But criminal liability? Rarely. Meanwhile, the systems meant to catch fraud, the EU's RASFF, the FDA's import alerts, miss most of what slips through. Why? Testing doesn't catch everything. Some shipments slip through. And fraudsters know it. They time their exports, alter paperwork, hide ingredients. They've learned how to work around the system, treating it like a game they know how to win. As one Europol official put it, fake and dangerous food and drink threaten the health and safety of people around the world. Criminals' only concern is profit. And until the risk finally outweighs the reward, the deception will continue. Quietly, profitably, invisibly. But what about you? What about the people who trust what's on the label? In our final chapter, we open the kitchen cabinet and ask the one question spice companies don't want to hear. What's really in your rack? So, what do you do? Here's the hard truth. Unless you run a chemical lab in your kitchen, you may never truly know what's in your spice rack, because fraudsters don't label their lies. They don't write lead chromate on the jar. They don't list brick powder or textile dye or shredded leaves under ingredients. They just count on one thing that you'll never ask. But now, you know. You know that oregano might be 70% not oregano. That saffron could be corn silk soaked in dye. That paprika may hide industrial lead. That turmeric, the so-called healing root, has quietly poisoned children. So what's in your rack? Maybe nothing, maybe everything. Because this crime doesn't need a warehouse, or a factory, or a smuggling ring. It only needs a pinch, a spoon, a label, and your trust. It's already on your plate. It's already in your home. But now that you know, it can't stay hidden. Because once you see the lie, you never taste the same again.